Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is the Ukraine War News Update segment for the 20th of March 2023. Where should we go to first? Well, our usual opening gambit of Russian losses for the day before, Ukrainian figures released, usual caveats, propaganda, inaccurate. Russia don't produce the same ones, but I think these are indicatively useful. They allow you to see a trend, and I think they are actually pretty accurate. So, what's happened recently? 700 liquidated personnel, still a fairly high numbers. Often on a Monday, we see a dip in figures because it represents the day before, which is a Sunday. Quite often, people aren't doing as much counting and stuff on a Sunday. I think it just seems that not all the time, there's often a dip on a Monday. Anyway, 5 tanks, 16 APCs, 9 artillery systems, fairly sizable numbers there, particularly in the APCs and artillery systems. 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, 1 UAV, 1 drone, 8 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 3 pieces of special equipment. Quite often see numbers in the special equipment these days are ticking up quite consistently. But yeah, APCs, artillery, and 5 tanks is still not going to be pleasant for the Russians. There's a lot of footage around at the moment of losses. And so I think we've seen some huge losses of tanks and APCs and artillery over the last week. And what I try and do in this little section at the beginning of news is give you some basis for thinking that these are pretty accurate figures. We'll go first to a Ka-52, which is actually not on those figures yesterday, but it might have been one from earlier in the week, or last week, sorry. So this is visual evidence of a Ka-52 being shot down with what looks like a Manpad rocket. So that's missile. That is that helicopter is not looking like it's going to last too much longer, and I imagine that fell out of the sky, but I can't be sure. But it's certainly been hit. During the past day, the Ukrainian Air Force struck 3 Buk M12 anti-aircraft systems, 7 strikes on areas where Russian personnel was concentrated, and 1 ammunition depot was hit. General Staff has reported taking out a Lancet drone as well. It's the 3 Buks I think is important. Those are anti-aircraft systems. So on the list we have 2 that were taken out yesterday. There've been anti-aircraft systems being consistently hit over the last week, and I think that is important because those are expensive bits of kit often, and they represent a real threat to any future Ukraine offensive, given that they would want to do a combined arms offensive involving aircraft as well. And so taking out the air systems like anti-aircraft systems like that is really important. Okay, there's just a whole load of footage of lots of losses in terms of mechanized equipment. Russians launched, according to Tendar, an attack with maybe 3, maybe even 4 BMPs, and someone says below, actually there's 5 BMPs in this that were taken out. But when the first one got destroyed, they panicked. The last one also almost escaped, but 1 anti-tank missile eliminated it too. And it's, this kind of video footage has suddenly, we've seen an uptick in this kind of footage over the last 3 or 4 days, and I think that represents that there is genuinely a large loss of mechanized equipment, and that's a BMP suddenly runs into a bit of trouble, or a bit of trouble runs into it, and that takes one for the team. But as I always find this quite interesting, how survivable these hits are. Like, you end up most of the people getting off, and it's burning. This guy's still standing there. I mean, it's quite incredible. You would think hits like that would cause people inside to be killed, but quite often, more often than not killed. And they get up, but that they get off and run away. But that piece of equipment is obviously inoperable now. On the other side, this is, and I reported this the other day, in the Zaporizhia area near Roboterna. This was a reconnaissance in force attack by the Ukrainians, and they lost a number of YPR 765. These are Dutch APCs that have been provided, quite large numbers actually, based on the M113, the old American APC. But yeah, this was quite well reported, particularly amongst the Russian channels, as you can imagine. It didn't do very well, this Ukrainian attack, and they lost quite a bit of equipment there. So remember, this does happen on the other side. But here's attack yesterday. Russian tanks stopped by the 53rd Brigade near Vodyane in Donetsk. Again, quite a bit of material lost here. And a lot of activity going on around Avdiivka. This is to the south of Avdiivka in Vodyane, but there is quite a lot of movement for the Russians north. The Russians are having more success to the north of Avdiivka than they are to the south, but it is looking pretty dodgy for the Ukrainians around there, as to the north of Avdiivka, they are moving on main supply roads that supply Avdiivka. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you a bit more mechanized equipment being lost. Going on to drones, so this is interesting because there's a Bayraktar TB2 drone and footage has just come out. I don't know exactly when this happened, but this is footage of jets doing the same. A jet doing the same to this as was claimed to be done to the Reaper drone, the American drone. So it's not an unusual tactic for Russian jets to do. So as you can see, sort of circling, reminds me of a shark circling. And I think, it sort of does a bit of a 360 spin on its axis there. But yeah, so Russian jets were hassling this. The video feed is a bit stop and start. I don't know whether that's due to what the Russian jet is doing. But yeah, it just gives you precedent. I mean, I don't know if this happened before the Reaper drone, but these drones are getting hassled by jets. And I don't know whether the jet didn't take this one down. It probably knew it was Bayraktar rather than the Reaper drone, you would imagine. Why didn't it take it down? It might not have 100% known whose side this drone was on. I don't know. There are different theories as to why it wasn't taken out of the sky completely. But anyway, that just gives you an idea that it's not the first time that jets have done that to drones. Russian air defense has allegedly taken down a Ukrainian drone in the Tula region in Russia. This is interesting, not because it's 200 kilometers from the Russian capital, Moscow, so these can get pretty far into Russia before they're taken down. It's just that no one really knows what this drone is. It's a bit of a mysterious drone, and I find that interesting. Is this an indigenously manufactured drone, one of the new ones that the Ukrainians are working on, such as, for example, the Shark that's come out recently, or is this provided from another country? Just no one seems to know exactly what drone it is. Okay, going on to sort of other kind of forms of hits. In this case, a collaborator killed by explosion in an occupied part of Kherson. The proxy who served as commander of the patrol service of the occupied Novokakhovka district was blown up near the village of Yubeleny. The Russian Investigative Committee reported on March 19th. There's also in Kherson region another potential scalp for the resistance. It looks like a similar car bombing hit the commander of a platoon of Russian security forces in Skadovsk, so that's further down south. I presume these are two different instances. So the partisans really are quite active in the Kherson area. I would point you to a playlist I have. Go and check my playlist out. There's a couple of videos on partisan activity in and around Kherson particularly. They are so worth watching. So go and check those videos on that playlist of recommended Ukrainian videos. I think the playlist is called. Ukrainian artillery has hit and destroyed a Russian base near Dnipryani in the Kherson region, near to the Kakhovka Dam there. So Kherson has seen quite a bit of activity indeed. Locals report a fire near Novokakhovka, allegedly in the area of a grain elevator. Prior to this, locals have reported explosions or Russian shelling coming from approximately the same location. So whether this is a counter-battery fire that hits something else, there's some saying that that's not grain, that the clouds are too black, so that is, some people saying it's a fuel depot. Different claims for that, but certainly a lot of activity around that area. And then on the other side of the coin, the Russians are using incendiary ammunition in the Kherson area, as was seen last night. So it is quite tasty around there in terms of activity. Now, I'm showing you this because, first of all, this is in Bakhmut, north of Bakhmut, Yahidny, just north of the northern suburbs. This is a possible use of a JDAM. Some people claiming this is JDAM. You have troops coming out here. It cuts, and they're actually around here when the bomb hits. But it's a significant explosion and unlikely to be something like, I don't know, for example, an Excalibur ammunition round or even a HIMARS. It seems to be slightly more significant than that. So some people saying this is a JDAM bomb, which is a bomb which has a sort of gliding attachment to it, so it has a greater range and guidance as well. And as you can see, it cuts, and those people are further away, and that explosion fairly significant, as you can see from this the thermal imagery from this drone operating at night. But that building, I don't know what was in it. There's a troop accumulation or something else. I don't know. But that building was significantly hit and damaged. So it could well be a JDAM. And Ukraine's military repelled almost 70 assaults yesterday. The reason I've included this is because that's a downtick from 83 the day before, which itself was lower than on previous days. So you are seeing this, and it could be because it's Sunday, I don't know, but there's this theory that actually the Russian offensive really is kind of run out of steam. It's not operating at the kind of levels it was a couple of weeks ago, and has achieved relatively little anyway. That's a number that's worth keeping an eye on. How many registered attacks, effectively, that the Ukrainians are claiming have taken place. The Russians have already failed the operation to capture Bakhmut. The spokesman of Eastern Group of Troops, Serhiy Cherevati, has said. Now, according to the spokesman, today's Russian actions in the Bakhmut area can hardly be called a major strategic offensive operation. Now, in fact, tactically, they cannot complete the operation to capture the Ukrainian district center of Bakhmut. Yes, there are very active battles there. They still continue to carry out dozens of attacks on inertia, but they are suffering huge losses, the spokesman said. Interesting. I mean, they have made some incremental gains, the Russians, but it has slowed down over the last week. And one is wondering whether there will be a big counterattack, as I keep saying. But either way, the Russians, it's not been this great success, Bakhmut, that you were expecting, given a counteroffensive, given the fact they've actually been trying to take it for 7 months or whatever, 9 months, I don't know, a long time. Interesting that he's very publicly saying they failed, the operation has failed. So I don't know whether that is an indication that the Ukrainians are going to hit back there pretty soon or not, or whether it's just kind of psyops. Now, US, going on to the odds and sods here, US considers that a truce in Ukraine unacceptable at the moment, the White House reports. And there was talk yesterday, I was talking to you about how the Russians are putting out feelers. It could just be empty rhetoric to please the Chinese, or it could be an indication that actually they realize they're not doing too well, but they put out feelers for negotiations over the last few days, the Russians. US are publicly saying that's unacceptable at the moment. A truce is unacceptable at the moment is interesting. And some people say, as Noel reports here, hints they know what's coming. So truce is a bad idea at the moment because we're just about to see the beginning of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and you would want to only go to the table after that has finished, and see whether the Ukrainians get to after that, and then you calculate whether actually you want to go to the table even then, and whether their momentum is in their favor and they can continue. Anyway, I talked to you yesterday about this appearance of Putin in Mariupol. So many people talking about whether it really is Putin, whether it's a body double. And loads of, because sometimes you think, it's a bit conspiracy theorist, but actually loads of bona fide analysts are talking about a body double. So that's quite interesting. But I talked about how someone in the back had an earphone on, and this all looks like it's a bit stage. Well, someone's actually gone and done a bit of analysis and shown that these people who are supposed to be Mariupol residents are indeed people that you see in other staged appearances. So really interesting there that actually they're all just FSB agents, or Federal Protective Service, FSO agents, and someone has done the analysis of that. Really good work there, and it just shows you just can't trust any of this stuff surrounding Putin. But what's also interesting, and this was cut out of the actual eventual broadcast, or at least subsequent broadcasts, but have a listen. I hope you can hear this. In about the 17-second mark, someone can be heard shouting in the background, "It's all wrong. It's all for show." Other translations, "It's all fake." But have a little listen. So about the 20-second mark. So I don't know if you heard that. Just in the background, possibly in one of those buildings, someone's shouting out, "It's all fake." And there's been quite a bit of analysis on this. Kyiv Independent saying that it was all done at night because darkness allows him to highlight what he wants to show and keeps the city and his keeps the city, his army, completely destroyed and its few surviving inhabitants away from prying eyes. You don't see the destruction. It's at night. It's very easy to control the information that the viewer watches there or sees. Now, you've also got an interview or a chat he has with someone here. War criminal visits a city turned to dust. Translated fragments of Putin's visit. He's talking to this guy who is feeding him absolute nonsense. So this video goes in. You know, Vladimir, it's certainly visible. So it's certainly visible what they have been doing. Where we carried out offensive operations, bombing of residential areas did not happen. But from their side, quite the opposite. They were shooting directly on residential homes with tanks. And basically, this guy's just talking absolute nonsense to Putin, saying that the Russians didn't hit residential areas, but the Ukrainians did. And then below, someone's just spliced together all the visual evidence to prove completely wrong what this guy's saying. So the Russians did attack residential blocks. In fact, there's so much footage to prove that they did that it's ridiculous. Now, the reason I'm showing this is because I want to ask a question to you, and I'm be interested to see what your ideas are. I never know, and this goes back to the beginning of the war, where Putin decided to go into war based on really bad information. It had to be. So he genuinely thought it would be a 3-day deposing of the foreign government, and that the Russians would be welcomed with open arms and a bunch of flowers, and it didn't happen. How did he have such bad intel? And did he genuinely believe that? I think he did genuinely believe that, and that's why the plan was put together as it was, and it went ahead as it did. Here, I want to know whether he knows that this guy is talking BS to him, and whether that information becomes part of his background knowledge in future decisions. In other words, like, does he genuinely think that the Russians didn't attack the residential buildings? Does he genuinely believe that the Ukrainians did? You know, when someone speaks to him like this, does he believe Russia's own disinformation campaigns? He's the one at the top. It's all these other kind of agencies disinforming and talking absolute BS. And he's at the top. How does he have someone telling him, actually, no, that was rubbish? Because he doesn't know. Like, I'm not sure that he doesn't check the internet right, so he wouldn't go on and look to see whether Mariupol was destroyed by the Ukrainians or by the Russians. Yeah, it's a really interesting idea that he is one of the biggest victims of Russian disinformation. Arguably, I don't know if that's true. I'd like to know the answer to that. But you know, you've got someone here just sitting there telling him BS, and it is demonstrably false. But does he know that? Okay, going on to military aid and military equipment and such like. Again, I've shown you sort of heaps of this kind of footage. You are just getting more and more footage of, and sometimes it's training footage. It's maybe in Poland or Germany, not 100% sure where, but it's just a lot of equipment that the Ukrainians are being trained on and have access to and will have in their counteroffensive. Some people saying it's still not enough, and that may well be. Obviously, they need more, and they need more than enough. But it's just the reason I show you this is because I don't see much in way of what the Russians have. Here's another convoy. I'm pretty sure this one is in Ukraine. It's a convoy of equipment of MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, lining the streets full of Ukrainian soldiers. There's just a lot of equipment that the Ukrainians appear to have their hands on, or will have their hands on, and the Russians don't. Uh, this is great work done by Norwegian Aid Ukraine. So there's a lot of work. So kudos to these aid organisations. Here, three uh, ambulances, I believe, have been driven over huge distances to Ukraine to be delivered. Um, so, uh, yeah, 9 days east of Ukraine, 9 days after. Two of them are now saving lives in Bakhmut and one in Kherson. Fantastic. 4,000 kilometers to deliver these ambulances. Brilliant work. Moldova, so a country you think, okay, is a pawn between the warring factions in global geopolitics, but actually they are doing their own work to try and stem the influence of the Russian government. So the Moldovan government plans to impose sanctions against 25 individuals involved in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's reported by Europa Libera with reference to the statement of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, Nicu Popescu. That's brilliant, and welcome. The Russian army has not changed in 100 years, says the Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur. Russian army is less powerful than projected because of their World War II mentality. The minister also informed that Estonia has trained 600 Ukrainian infantrymen. So it's not just Poland and Germany and UK and the US training and housing these people, but Estonia is involved as well. And I wonder how many countries around have trained. Indeed, I wonder how many Ukrainian soldiers have been trained in advance of the upcoming counteroffensive. Estonia apparently were a key player. In fact, got the ball rolling in this. In fact, let's talk about it here next. Let's bring that here. In the EU seeking to provide 1 million artillery shells to Ukraine. This is behind a paywall and I can't get an archived version. So EU's foreign and defense ministers are expected on Monday, so today, to back spending 1 billion euros. It's about $1.1 billion from its European Peace Facility for EU countries to jointly buy ammunition, according to people familiar with the matter. They will also back spending another 1 billion from the same fund to reimburse what member states give out their own stocks. This is really, really important because Ukraine really need artillery ammunition. But apparently Estonia were one of the key members in states in getting that ball rolling. So that's fantastic. Estonia really playing their parts. Financial Times, however, just to put a bit of a dampener on that, has reported that explosives shortage jeopardizes the EU effort to boost shell production for Ukraine. EU member states that produce ammunition for Ukraine have faced a shortage of gunpowder, plastic explosives, and TNT. The Financial Times have reported. A group of Ukrainian soldiers has finished training in Italy on the SAMP/T air defense system, says a source from Ukrinform. The SAMP/T air defense system uses Aster missiles that have a maximum speed of 4.5 Mach, a range of 120 kilometers, and a max altitude of 25 kilometers. So these are really useful pieces of air defense system. And Italy providing training for them and some of these systems themselves is fantastic. Ukraine have been hit quite badly over the last week, particularly from the sorts of missiles that they can't shoot down, and these more capable systems have a better chance of shooting some of those down. Demining systems from Croatia appear to be on the scene in Kherson. This is fantastic. I've done a few segments on demining and how prevalent a problem this is right across the areas of the front line. And after the war is over, there's going to be a decade of demining taking place for sure. So let's go to a bit of geopolitics to finish. So we've had the ICC issuing an arrest warrant for Putin. South Africa is aware of its illegal obligation over Putin's ICC arrest warrant. A spokesperson for the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, said on March the 19th that the country had noted the report on the warrant of arrest. Now, it's a member of the ICC and a Rome status, which means that the country is obliged to cooperate with the court's demand to arrest Putin. But it puts them in a difficult situation because they're already also in BRICS. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So in this group that involves Russia. They also didn't arrest al-Bashir in 2015, who was also under a similar warrant. So there is precedence for South Africa not to adhere to their obligation. It'll be interesting. They are in a difficult situation. I wonder which way it'll go, considering there's a strong likelihood that Putin will want to visit member countries of BRICS in forthcoming months and years. Germany has confirmed it will arrest Vladimir Putin if he travels there. So that's very interesting. Dmitry Peskov rules out any kind of downgrade in diplomatic ties with Germany. Alexander Bastrikin, who advocates an alternative Russia-friendly court to the ICC, wants a legal assessment of Germany's proclamation. But that is an important position, important statement for the Germans to make. Now, in the area, Kazakhstan, I mean, there are issues between Armenia and Azerbaijan at the moment. Those border issues have flared up again. I think this is a case of opportunism, while the Russian bear is otherwise engaged elsewhere. The nations around them are looking, doing a few side eye looks, thinking now's possibly the time to cause some trouble. Kazakhstan, this is such a strong bunch of statements. So Arman Shurev, a public figure and professional journalist from Kazakhstan, replied to arrogant speech and threats of Russian ambassador in Kazakhstan, Borodavkin. Russia is losing its influence among its neighbors and is rightly viewed as a threat. And I will just quickly, I won't play it to you. I'll just say what he says because it's just huge. This is really strong stuff. Friends, today my impeccable knowledge of the Russian language will allow me to give a rebuke to this idiot, the ambassador of the Russian Federation in Kazakhstan, Borodavkin. He said that Nazis, nationalists live in Kazakhstan, and if necessary, we Russians will conduct a special military operation. So it's threatening Kazakhstan, the Russians are. Listen, your ability to perform operations is broken, Borodavkin, and that of your patron Putin. For 9 months, you have been receiving a beating from the valiant Ukrainians, and I can say, God forbid, you decide to come to us for an easy victory. You will not have an easy victory. The entire Kazakh steppe will be strewn with the corpses of your conscripts. So when you talk about Russophobia in Kazakhstan, and I talked about Russophobia yesterday in my extra video, I want to say that you people are the first to sow this Russophobia. People like you, Borodavkin, people like Nikonov, Fedorov, all sorts of Solovyov and Medvedev, who almost every day through your propaganda declare that the city of Almaty needs to be bombed with an atomic bomb. I played this months back. This was something that propagandists did say. So the Kazakhs here have remembered that, obviously, as you would. I did do a segment on this. Anyway, to return to this guy, he says that the northern and eastern regions of Kazakhstan need to be captured and annexed by Russia, that the Kazakh language needs to be banned in Kazakhstan. This is so similar to what the propagandists have been saying about Ukraine. It's just like taken from the same, they're singing from the same song sheet that they were singing from with Ukraine. Russophobia is all that you have achieved with your stupid actions. Do you really think the Ukrainians just started shooting you out of the blue? It was you who broke into someone else's house with a fire and a sword, and now you are getting a response. The same will happen if you come to us, come to our neighbors. You are idiots. You are cannibals who eat themselves. I am very happy. I hope this rotten Russian Federation of yours will fall apart in the near future. Borodavkin, if you want to see Nazis and fascists in Kazakhstan, look in the mirror and you will see the main Nazi and fascist. Slava Ukraine, Alga Kazakhstan, which is glory to Ukraine, forward Kazakhstan. Just really, really strong language there. And just to add to that, and props to someone in a thread to my video yesterday who put me onto this. The Kazakhs, have impounded property of Roscosmos, which is the Russian space agency subsidiary, so a subsidiary of them, due to lack of payment. So incredible. On March the 7th, Kazakh media reported that the bailiff service of the Republic of Kazakhstan had impounded the property of Tsenki Center for the Operation of Ground-Based Space Infrastructure, a subsidiary of Russian state-owned Roscosmos, and issued a travel ban on the company's head in Kazakhstan. Tsenki reportedly owes a debt of 13.5 billion tenge, 2 billion rubles, or about $29 million, to the joint Kazakh-Russian enterprise Byterex JSC. The arbitration court of the Astana International Financial Center had ruled in Byterex's favor last year, year and decided on enforcement actions back in November. Senki was informed in late January, but apparently did not pay its debt, thus the impounding and block on transferring assets and property out of Kazakhstan, so on and so forth. This is where I think a lot of the Russia's space activity launches from in Kazakhstan. So this is hugely important, and it's just another little piece of the jigsaw that paints a picture of the difficulties that Russia is having as a result of the Ukrainian war, but not just in terms of them and Ukraine, but them and the rest of the world, and then them and the South Caucasus and the Eurasian nations spreading sort of eastwards. Just a loss of soft and hard power in the area. Just fascinating to see how that develops. Okay, I know some of you really like Elon Musk. You're big fans of him, and every time I criticize him, I get a bit of blowback. So I'm going to expect that. However, what he's doing with Twitter, and I use Twitter an awful lot, is really bad. But also, there's been a report by AP that's shown that the Ohio train derailing that happened recently, that was really caused a load of political fallout, that the Republicans in the US capitalized on this a lot, but Russia were also involved. So pro-Moscow voices tried to steer Ohio train disaster debate. And part of the problem here, or a large part of the problem, is that Elon Musk has got rid of moderation from Twitter. So anyone can, it's starting to get to a bad situation where anyone can say what they like and there's no comeback, and you are getting lots of disinformation voices back in Twitter. I mean, it was a problem anyway, but you wholesale get rid of your moderation, it becomes a bigger problem. And truth on Twitter is now a much more complicated affair than it was 6 months ago. Now, I wrote an article sometime back on how Twitter and the blue checkmark debacle went from hilarious to horrifying. Now, the blue check mark. So if you go back, let's have a look. So Elon Musk has a blue check mark. Traditionally, that means he is verified as Elon Musk. So anyone with a blue check mark is who they say they are, and you had to provide photographic evidence and this and that, and then Twitter would verify that and then give you a blue check mark. So it was kind of a form of moderation. It's like, or certainly verification. You are who you say you are. Elon Musk got rid of that because he lost so much advertising revenue, he had to get money somewhere. So what he did is he invented the blue Twitter blue, basically as a way of getting money in. So you pay for a blue tick, but you don't have to be who you say you are. So what you started getting is this situation where people were paying for blue check marks, and saying that they were. So Lockheed Martin, someone pretended to be Lockheed Martin and got a blue check mark and paid for it, $8 a month. So we will begin halting all weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States until further investigation into their record of human rights abuses. We are Lockheed Martin. Absolutely brilliant. So like top quality trolling, but cause a huge problem with truth. Like these guys who aren't who they say they are. So Eli Lilly, who are they make insulin, announced that they were going to give insulin for free, which is a big thing in America. The overcharging of insulin and the pricing of drugs in America is a huge, big pharma, massive problem. Anyway, won't go into that. But their announcement from this fake blue tick account lost them something like $16 billion off their valuation overnight, right? And it hugely problematic. And this happened loads and loads. Anyway, just to go back, Elon Musk has just announced that in the coming weeks, Twitter will prioritize replies by, in other words, give a greater voice to people you follow. So if on my Twitter feed, I'm going to see more activity from people I follow, but second, verified accounts, which is Twitter Blue accounts. Now, that's basically people who pay for blue ticks get more voice. And then at the bottom of the list of unverified accounts, right? What this means is that what the AP has found is that Russian disinformation entities are more likely to pay for these blue checks than randoms. In other words, they are being given a greater voice. So disinformation is being arguably being given a greater voice than just normal information, especially when you're talking about uh, the ability to um, manipulate the blue check thing. Uh, the Associated Press found the accounts identified by Reset's researchers, they're talking about research by this organization, received extra boosts from Twitter itself in the form of a blue check mark. Before Musk purchased Twitter last year, its check marks denoted accounts run by verified users, often public figures, celebrities, or journalists. It was seen as a mark of authenticity on a platform known for bots and spam accounts. Musk ended the system and replaced it with Twitter Blue, which is given to users who pay $8 a month and supply a phone number. Twitter Blue users agree not to engage in deception and are required to post a profile picture and name, but there's no rule that they could use their own. So basically, they don't provide their own name or picture, and it's just like a disinformation sham. Not all the time, but in significant amounts. Under the program, Twitter Blue users can write and send longer tweets and videos. Their replies are also given higher priority on other posts. Now, you've got to remember that Yevgeny Prigozhin, said last year, gentlemen, we have interfered, are interfering, and will interfere with US politics carefully, precisely, surgically, and in our own way, as we know how to do. So he said that of the midterm elections, right? So they have admitted that they interfere in American politics directly. And this is another example of them doing so in trying to steer the research shows that they are trying to steer the debate on the Ohio train disaster. And it's just a real problem that the rules to Twitter and the way that Twitter is set up is changing, and it more favors disinformation over truth than it did before. That, for me, as a philosopher interested in epistemology and in knowledge and truth, and how we go about doing that, is just really, really annoys me. And I hope that changes. But it could be a false hope. Anyway. Last thing I'm going to leave you with. Anyone remember the days when Sleepy Dima was thought of as a moderate during his time as president? Well, this is Dmitry Medvedev suggests striking the building of the ICC in The Hague with a hypersonic missile. It is just an international organization, not the population of a NATO country, so nothing would happen, he explains. Imagine being a UK politician, like, suggesting that. Just unbelievable. But there you go. That's the Russian politicians for you. Sorry, it's been a long one. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I will catch up with you later in my Frontline update.